Welcome back to TECHMIMIC, where you can simply view, imitate, replicate, and get on with your day. In this video, I will demonstrate step by step how to clone the system disk in Linux Mint without going into too much technical detail. The starting point for this video is an existing Linux Mint machine with only one hard disk, and now you want to clone the contents of the hard disk to another one. A very common scenario when you see signs of degradation and you want to replace the hard disk, or you just want to create a full clone for backup purposes. This procedure will also work if you want to upgrade to and replace your hard disk with a larger size. It won't work if you want to clone to a hard disk of a smaller size. An upcoming video will handle the specific situation where the target disk is smaller than the source disk. We are working with the system disk here, and that poses its challenges when it comes to cloning, because that system disk will always be in use. After all, this is the disk from where you have started the Linux Mint operating system. If you just want to clone your second hard disk, let's say to a third hard disk, you most likely wouldn't be watching this video, because this is just a simple copy and paste procedure. What is demonstrated in this video will also work fine for that. This is a Linux Mint machine, and when I open the File Explorer, this will bring me to the user's home directory by default. By clicking Go and then Computer, the disks are displayed. The file system icon will always be there, let's ignore that for now. And then there's only one disk, and in this case it is an Intenso SSD disk. This doesn't really matter, because the steps shown will work for old-fashioned spinning hard disks just as well. To check out some details about the disk, from the menu, select Preferences and then Disks. On the left, select the disk, and then its partition layout will be displayed. This is a default out-of-the-box layout for Linux Mint. During the initial installation, I have just selected to use the entire disk for Linux Mint, and this is a typical end result: a small partition and a larger one. Luckily, we don't have to deal with partitions because the entire disk will be cloned. There is a lot of information here that can be mostly ignored. The size is however important. The disk is 120 GB. At this point, it is a good idea to make a note of the serial number and the device name. In this case, the serial number ends with 2491 and the device name is dev-sda. Let me write this down. If you already know you have completely different disks, a note of the UUID and the model might be all that's needed, but because my disks are of the exact same make and model, I want to be able to tell them apart later based on the serial number. Now shut down the PC, remove the cover, remove the new hard disk from its packets, and physically add the second hard disk to your computer, and then go back into Linux Mint. The File Explorer is now showing two disks. And again, let's check the details with the disks utility. The original system disk is still the same, and there is now a second disk visible. Because in my case, the disk comes straight out of the box, there is no partition available, and everything is marked as free space. If you are using an existing disk, it doesn't matter what the partitions are. They will be removed automatically at a later point. But if you want, of course, you can remove them. As always, proceed with extreme caution to prevent any unwanted data loss. Now make a note again. The serial number ends with 2847 and the device is dev-sdb. You might have already seen some tutorials that describe how to clone the disk with just the disk's utility by selecting it and then clicking Create Disk Image. Then you have to specify a location for the image file. And in my experience, that never works because where I store that image file doesn't seem to matter. It can be on the second hard disk or an external USB drive, because the moment you continue and authenticate, the error message "Error mounting file system, target is busy" appears. And that makes sense, because Linux Mint is still running. Then I've also read that you could use the Linux Mint Live USB and run it from there, but again, I was not successful. Two popular utilities mentioned for this task are gparted and Clonezilla, and once again, for this particular task, cloning an entire disk, your safest and easiest bet would be Clonezilla. If you would like to see a video how to clone the system straight from the command line with Linux Mint running and without the need for Clonezilla, this video, also linked below, might be useful. Clonezilla is described as a partition and disk imaging/cloning program, where gparted is described as a partition manager to enable resize, copy and move partitions without data loss. And that is simply what it was designed to do. Gparted is extremely useful in such situations, but its strong point isn't the cloning of entire drives. So for that we will turn our attention to Clonezilla. Now download Clonezilla from clonezilla.org and be warned, its website is completely filled and littered with ads all over the place. Select download from the left hand side. And there is an important message at the bottom: all versions of Clonezilla support legacy BIOS. If your machine comes with a UEFI secure boot, the AMD 64 version is going to be needed. But that's the version we will download anyway, as you will see in the next step. I select stable or alternative stable from the list, and then select AMD 64 under the CPU architecture. Most modern PCs, including those with Intel processors, will use AMD 64, and .iso under the file type. Then click download. This will start the download from source forwards, where you just have to wait for the download to finish. As mentioned, it is full of ads, but we don't really get to complain, because after all, Clonezilla is completely free. Once the download is finished, open the File Explorer and locate the downloaded clonezilla.iso file. Now attach a USB stick that you have assigned to the Clonezilla live image to the machine. And there it is. We now need to create the live USB, and for this Linux Mint comes bundled with the utility USB Image Writer. You can find this in the menu under Accessories, or just right-click the .iso file and select Make Bootable USB Stick. The ISO is already selected, so just select the USB stick and then click Write. After a while, the image is done, and now it is the time to reboot the machine. Make sure to leave the USB stick in there, because you now need to boot Clonezilla from it. You might need to enter your BIOS or UEFI settings to change the boot order. Look for a prompt during startup that tells you how to enter setup. Usually it's a key like F2, delete or escape. Once there, set your USB stick as the first boot device, save the changes and exit. On my old trusty Dell Optiplex machine, I can select a temporary boot device without making any permanent changes by pressing F12 when the Dell logo appears. This of course will be different for every machine. In the legacy boot, both disks are listed and the USB storage device. Let me select it and enter. And after a very loud beep, I am now awake and presented with the Clonezilla boot menu. Just leave the top option and enter again and wait a few moments. Now you can select a language and a keyboard layout. I will leave a lot of the defaults, so it's just enter to confirm the selections. From the Start Clonezilla menu, select the top option, Start Clonezilla. The next menu tells us that there are two modes available: cloning based on an image and cloning based on disk to disk. And that's what we need. Be sure to select device to device from this menu. Down arrow and enter. Leave the beginner mode and leave disk to local disk. Clonezilla will now discover your disks. We can now start to clone the system disk without any errors, because Linux Mint is no longer loaded and the disk is not currently in use. And once again, from this point forward, proceed with extreme caution to prevent any data loss and be sure to have backups in place. First we have to select the source disk. Now get your earlier notes out, where we have written down that the source disk is serial number 2491 and the device SDA is listed at the start of the line and the serial number at the end. Because both my disks are the same make and model and similar size, I have to be extra careful to select the correct one. If your target disk is larger or of a different brand, the distinction will be easier to make. Select the source disk and hit enter. Then double check the target disk, the only one left, and it matches with the node's serial number 2847 and device SDB, so hit enter. The next menu, just enter again, and keep the selection on use the partition table from the source disk. This is what I meant earlier, even if the target disk isn't new, it doesn't matter because the partitions will be deleted to match the source disk. Once again, enter, and again when it is asking about the log files. Almost there, the action to perform when everything is finished, leave this one at choose and enter. Now Clonezilla tells you the exact command you could run next time if you don't want to go through the menus, but for now press enter to continue. You are now getting the last chance to back out if you made a mistake. Clonezilla is warning you that the destination drive will be overwritten. Type Y and enter to continue. And it wants to be really sure, so the same question again. After another Y and enter, there is no turning back. Depending on the size of your hard disk, this would be a good time to go and get some coffee, because you will only get nervous watching this anyway. Eventually this screen appears where you can press enter to continue. From the last choose mode menu, select power off and enter. Now wait for the countdown timer and for the machine to be completely powered off. Now be sure to remove the Clonezilla USB stick from the machine. And depending on what you want to do, remove the target disk and put it on the shelf as a backup, or remove the original source disk and replace it with the target disk, resulting in only one hard disk in the machine. Because both disks are exact replicas, remember to not leave two disks in the machine before you boot back into Linux Mint. If you do that, you will have effectively two identical systems living within the same machine, and the operating system will be completely confused and booting into it will fail. In my case, the USB stick was removed and the source disk was removed from the system and replaced with the target. Now power up the machine and fingers crossed. Select Linux Mint from the menu. And there it is. Back into disks. The only available disk is now the new hard disk, and the proof of this is the serial number of 2847. Now you know how to clone the system disk in Linux Mint with the use of Clonezilla. And not just the system disk, you can clone pretty much every disk by using this method. That's it. Hope it helped, and if it did, please like the video and keep it up. Until next time, bye!